Hello, I'm Chris Fowler, and welcome to Sports Century. Standing 5'9 3/4 in his socks, Doug Flutie has made a career out of proving he can play with the big boys. In the process, he's silenced some of his critics and done some amazing things, including one fortuitous game-winning pass in college that'll be watched for generations. But in the years since that Hail Mary was answered, Flutie has built a legacy of defying the conventional wisdom. It begins with the purity of his athleticism.
The dynamic that he brought to the game was great athleticism in the classic schoolyard sense and a chip the size of a lumber yard. I think that's what drove Doug.
Being as small as he was when people said he couldn't do it, you know, his heart is the size of a giant. He's going to prove you wrong.
And look at this. Flutie just dumps it in the end zone to Gieselman.
Coming out of high school being told I was not a Division I quarterback, coming out of college and being told I was not an NFL quarterback, it winds up motivating me.
First and goal, Flutie rolling. Touchdown.
Doug's career is about winning. All this other stuff is sort of secondary that folks talk about. Is he big enough? Can he throw it downfield? Doug is really wired to win.
Doug Flutie is a natural, and naturals come in all sizes. He's instinctive, he's mobile, he can focus downfield and throw an accurate ball.
Now they've got Flutie running. For the corner, Martin got it, touchdown.
He just has a way of getting out into the open, getting the ball downfield, and he has a burst at 0 to 60 in 5 yards. He can take off.
Doug directing traffic.
He always was aggressive, always had that killer instinct, but he also had the intellectual capacity to understand the game. For great quarterbacks, the game moves in slow motion.
You would never want your kid to learn how to play quarterback watching Doug Flutie. However, put him in a ball game, make a play break down, and that's when he's at his best. Ad-libbing was his thing.
Nice move he made to cut back inside on Clemens, and now he's going to go all the way.
You know, one of the first times he played, he started running down the field with the ball, and all of a sudden he just threw it backwards to Thurman Thomas on the side. He's already 10 yards down the field. And Thurman made about 15 more yards, and everybody just went, ah!
I think a lot of the things that Doug carried on the field, you know, he was confident, borderline arrogance, and he made plays out there that most quarterbacks wouldn't even think of making. But a lot of times, I think it carried over to arrogance on the field, and he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
To do what Doug has done over all these years, I think you have to play with a certain passion and a certain motivation. But I think the problem with that is Doug took it to another level to where anything critical said of him, he became very insecure about and would rarely accept the blame.
A typical comment from Doug would be, yeah, you know what? I really shouldn't have thrown that ball on that interception. But there would always be a but. And I think that rubbed a lot of his teammates the wrong way.
Doug expected so much of himself. That translated into him expecting so much out of his team. And if others fell short, it may have been that a perception of observers that Doug didn't feel they were worthy. It didn't have anything to do with personalities. It had everything to do with competition, wanting to win.
Success is almost his reason for living. It was almost an insecurity that if I don't do it, I'm not worthy.
In November of 1984, Doug Flutie became part of college football lore when Boston College engaged in a shootout with defending national champion Miami in the Orange Bowl.
Either defense could not stop the offense. And it was really a situation where the last team that had the ball was probably going to win the game.
Down 41-38 with less than a minute to play, Miami, with Bernie Kosar at the helm, drove deep into BC territory.
Doug comes up, and I'm on the sidelines, and he says, Barry, tell Coach to let him score. I said, what do you mean, let them score? He said it with a straight. He says, they're going to score anyways. They've been scoring all day. Just give me the ball back with enough time.
Kosar takes Bratton, dive, touchdown, Miami! Miami leads at 44-41. 28 seconds left in the game.
You can underline all his leadership
After Bratton scored, and the famous shot of him on the sidelines, just kind of smiling, nodding his head, okay, time to go to work.
I can remember being in the stands, and I got to admit, everybody in this section thought the game was over, packing up, walking out.
But I have to tell you this, 28 seconds left with Doug Flutie is an eternity.
After 22 seconds had elapsed, Boston College, trailing 45-41, stood at the Hurricanes' 48.
So Miami one play away from a big win over BC, unless Doug Flutie in the final play of this game can pull off another miracle.
We just jumped into the huddle, and there was really no conversation other than the call of the play.
We called it flood tip. My own twist on it is to hang on to the ball as long as I could. Let the receivers get down there so everybody is in the end zone looking up at the ball together. So that's why I scrambled out to the right. I got out on the corner and let it rip.
Flutie is back. 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. This game is over. Hail Mary, Dave, it is. Oh, he got it! He got it! He got it! Touchdown! 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 Touchdown, Boston College! He did it! He did it! Flutie did it!
I assumed the ball was incomplete. And all of a sudden I saw the official's arms go up in the back of the end zone, and I started kind of laughing to myself. Like, you gotta be kidding me.
I don't believe it! Boston College has won! Oh my goodness! Miami, that's awful.
The play passed into sports history under the title of Hail Mary, and its creator was tagged with the rep of a miracle worker.
When you heard the name Doug Flutie right away in your mind, you know, that game, the heroics, the winning when things were at the optimum worst, all that leaped into your mind, and that's never going to go away.
It's just embedded in him.
Born in Baltimore on October 23, 1962, the third of 4 children to Joan and Richard Flutie, Doug was 6 when his family moved to Melbourne Beach, Florida, where he soon began to show signs of the future.
Doug is the type of person that if he walked off the field and he's lost a game, he's just absolutely miserable. He replays every play, what he could have done better.
He was very analytical. Did you see this and did you see that? And you know what would have happened if this had happened and that had happened?
But concerns in the Flutie home weren't always limited to such simple matters.
Money was really tight when we were growing up. My father worked long days, my mother was home with us, and I don't want this to sound wrong, but it made you strive for something a little bit more.
I remember Doug organizing his siblings, and they'd go out and go around and collect bottles and get money for it, because Dad's paycheck wasn't coming in till Friday.
In high school, he gave up baseball for a year to work, to help the family out.
We wouldn't pay a bill a couple months just so they could have their baseball shoes.
I didn't realize that everybody else didn't fight these issues at times. Leaving bath water, you know, leaving it in there for the next guy to take a bath, or things like that.
In 1976, the Fluties moved again, this time to Natick, Massachusetts, a working-class suburb of Boston. In high school, Doug started at quarterback as a sophomore. Although he earned all-state honors as a senior, Boston College was the only Division I-A school to offer him a football scholarship.
When we saw him on tape, we saw him kick a winning field goal. He had never kicked a field goal in his life. Saw him have 2 interceptions in a game. Saw him run for 2 touchdowns in another game. You know, all he did was make plays, so we knew, you know, he would play someplace for us.
Flutie started his freshman season as BC's number 4 quarterback. During a shellacking by Penn State, he entered the game in the 4th quarter and threw for 135 yards and a touchdown.
This is Flutie. Touchdown, Boston College.
Well, I'll tell you, that Flutie boy can cock and fire the football, and I think BC's found themselves a quarterback.
Doug's great good fortune at Boston College to have Jack McNeil as a coach. And he had not the slightest hesitation in giving the keys to the car to the daring young man who was going to be driving it at 85 miles an hour.
You always knew when he was on the field, you had a chance to win or you were gonna win. That's what Doug Flutie did, is he raised the level of talent around him.
As a sophomore in 1982, Flutie led the Eagles to their first bowl game since New Year's Day 1943, and then took them to 2 more, including a win over Houston in the 1985 Cotton Bowl.
Flutie was a phenomenon. He played in a professional market and made himself the second biggest star in town over a 2-year period, the biggest being Larry Bird.
Boston College is the hottest campus in America today in terms of applications. Kids want to go there, and there's been an explosion of building.
He's responsible for the building of not 1 but 2 athletic complexes that have followed him. If you had removed Doug Flutie from the equation, I can assure you that their athletic program would look nothing like they do today.
Flutie's fame was not limited to New England. While leading the Eagles to 27 victories in his last 3 seasons, he became the first Division I-A quarterback to pass for 10,000 yards. As a senior in 1984, Flutie won the Heisman Trophy. Yet the 175-pounder was not viewed by the NFL as prime material.
People looked at him and said, A, he's too short, B, he hates playing in the pocket. And there was about 22 offensive coordinators right away who would say, I will never take him because of either of those things.
Will you wait for the NFL draft?
I'd like to wait. Chances are that I will wait, but if New Jersey were to come around and make the offer something that I felt the NFL couldn't compete with, then maybe I wouldn't wait.
Soon after, Flutie signed a 6-year, $8.3 million contract with the New Jersey Generals of the USFL, and in 1985 led them into the playoffs by throwing and running for more than 2,500 yards in 15 games. But in August of 1986, the USFL folded, leaving Flutie to look for a new home.
Cinemax free for 3 months. Time Warner Cable. Enjoy better.
I've been told since day one that this was the game more suited to me, and all the NFL experts have their points of view. I think it's a game that I can excel at, and I hope I do.
In 1990, after 2 unsuccessful stops in the NFL, Doug Flutie headed north to the British Columbia Lions of the Canadian Football League, where the larger fields and different rules would free up his scrambling style.
With only 3 downs to work with as opposed to 4, Doug was able to assimilate information, understand the defense, use his athletic ability with the unlimited motion in short periods of time, and run all day long and wear out defenses.
I think the #1 reason I had fun in Canada was the coaches recognized an ability that I had on the field and let me go.
During 8 seasons with 3 teams in Canada, Flutie won 6 Most Outstanding Player awards and led Calgary and Toronto to 3 CFL championships.
He came up to Canada, he set records, he won championships, but people weren't taking him seriously because they were saying, well, that's in Canada, Doug, you know, you've done nothing in the National Football League.
In 1986, Flutie's NFL career began on a sour note when the defending champion Bears acquired him following the dissolution of the USFL. Quarterback Jim McMahon would become vocal in his derision of Flutie's relatively small stature by calling him Bambi and America's midget.
I think there's a lot of unhappy ball players here right now. I know it's not sitting well with a bunch of players.
We were very cliquish at that time. We really didn't absorb outsiders very friendly, especially quarterbacks.
The worst thing that could have happened to Doug was that Coach Ditka really liked Doug. He loved the fact that Doug was a winner, and he made no bones about it. He talked about it in the media, he talked about it in the press, he told us, and I think some guys resented that.
Flutie was traded to New England in October 1987, but played little. The next season, he came off the bench to spark the Patriots to a comeback win, and then led them to 6 victories over his next 9 starts. But after completing only 36 of 91 passes in 1989, he was released.
He was very upset. He would have loved to have his career in New England. It'll always be home. But more than that, more than proximity to home, it was the idea that he never felt he got the chance.
After conquering Canadian football, Flutie got a third chance to make his mark in the NFL. In 1998, he signed with Buffalo.
I was convinced that they believe in me. There's no prejudices or thoughts going into it, that I'm going to get a legitimate opportunity.
Flutie came to Buffalo feeling he was going to be the starting quarterback. Then they surprised him by bringing in Rob Johnson. Doug Flutie didn't like that. I mean, why would he want somebody to be brought in that could take away his playing time?
In Game 5, Flutie replaced the injured Rob Johnson and led the Bills to victory. The following week, against the undefeated Jaguars, he finished his first NFL start in 9 years with a game-winning flourish.
Here's Flutie rolling out, and he is in for the touchdown. Doug Flutie rolls out and in for the touchdown.
I remember asking John Butler, who was the general manager, in the locker room after that Jacksonville game, do you believe in Flutie magic? And he said, I do now.
It was absolutely insane. They called it Flutie Mania. Right before that, we had launched what was called Flutie Flakes. They predicted that cereal box to sell about 60,000 units in year one. It sold that in week 1.
Little old ladies came out of the woodwork to wear Doug Flutie jerseys at Bills games. He was little, he was fun, and suddenly they started winning.
You could argue that Doug saved the franchise in many respects because they started winning and the sales of the club seats and the premium seats picked up. Had he not been in there playing and had they not been winning, I don't know if that would have taken place.
After leading the Bills into the playoffs in 1998, Flutie took his team to a 10-5 record the next season. With another postseason berth assured, head coach Wade Phillips replaced him with Johnson in the season finale.
As soon as I played Rob against Indy, I knew something was up. I feel like they're always trying to replace you and always put the other guy in, and that's just the way I am.
He kept saying to me, they're going to start Rob in the playoffs. They're going to start Rob. And I'm like, Doug, there's no way they're going to start Rob.
When Johnson threw for 287 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 31-6 rout, Phillips announced Johnson would start against the Titans in the playoffs. After a stunning 22-16 loss, Flutie was embroiled in a bitter and very public quarterback controversy.
It was beyond a soap opera. You had a city that was divided on the issue. I mean, if you didn't know any better, you'd swear there was an election going on.
When I left, it got worse than I thought it ever could possibly get. The relationship with these two guys had really put a strain on this football team because that's what everybody's talking about. A lot of the players got fed up with it.
Guys were choosing sides. I think that, a lot of the offensive linemen wanted Doug in there because they didn't give him any sacks because Doug always got the ball out of his hands. And some guys wanted to keep Rob in there for the simple fact that, he was brought here to be the starter.
They needed to find out once and for all, is Rob the quarterback of the future or isn't he the quarterback of the future? They knew they weren't going to the Super Bowl. They knew they were in salary cap problems. So why go with a 38-year-old quarterback when you're rebuilding?
After winning 21 of his 30 starts for the Bills, Flutie was released following the 2000 season. In March of 2001, he joined his 4th NFL team when the Chargers signed him to a $30 million 6-year contract. Though his professional life was on the upswing, Flutie was engaged in a far more serious long-term battle.
Hi, I'm Joe Thought.
To serving others.
These are people who can get the job done.
Heroes work here. Employ excellence. Hire veterans.
In 1985, Flutie married his high school sweetheart, Lori. They had 2 children, Alexa and Doug Jr. Before their son's 3rd birthday in 1994, the Fluties began to notice behavioral changes in him.
Dougie actually developed very typically until he was about 2.5.
Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
He had talked in full sentences. He was playing sports, walking, running, doing everything. And then all of a sudden he just stopped talking.
Sentences became phrases, phrases became words, words became nothing.
At the very beginning, we thought maybe it was just a phase that he was going through. Then we thought, maybe there was something wrong with his hearing. As it turned out, that was all fine, and at that point, they told us that we should probably bring him to a neurologist.
We started to, to tell the doctors You know, oh, he used to do this, used to do that. He doesn't do this anymore. And we got a videotape of what we called the Dougie highlight film. And we showed him, you know, hey, yeah, he used to do this.
Oh, you did? Baby, Mama. The baby. Baby.
And we realized ourselves at that point, without a diagnosis, all of a sudden it hit us how far he really had regressed.
Doug Jr. was suffering from childhood disintegrative disorder, a form of autism that affects the part of the brain that controls social interaction and communication skills.
When the diagnosis came, I mean, it hit you like a ton of bricks. Here's our little boy. He's still inside there. We just got to pull him back out.
And they're telling us, you know, that this is going to be a lifelong disorder, and they don't really know how much he's going to progress. It was just kind of a lot to take in all of a sudden.
We were, you know, shocked and disappointed and all that, but right away it was like, okay, what do we do to move forward? How do we treat this? How do we give him an opportunity to be the best he can be?
In 1998, the Fluties established the Doug Flutie Jr. Foundation for Autism. By 2005, the charity had raised more than $7 million.
Through us, Dougie is helping people and raising awareness of autism and raising money for research and helping other families get computers, bicycles, whatever it is they need.
I want him to progress and get all he can out of life, but we love Dougie for the way he is, and he's helping a lot of other kids because of it.
He's the happiest child you'll ever meet in your life. He's always smiling. We have to have a lot of patience with him, but he's come a long, long way. If he's anything like his father, he'll jump over all those obstacles.
Running the 2-minute drill. Flutie. Pass is caught. Flutie's been in for 3 plays, and the Patriots have scored 2 touchdowns.
In 2005, Flutie, after being released by the Chargers, signed with the Patriots as Tom Brady's backup. He was home again, back where memories of the Hail Mary still burn brightest.
Doug Flutie returning to play for the Patriots is absolutely a closing of the circle. It's a dream. His whole identity stems from what he did a few miles away from where he played.
After playing 1 season for the Patriots, Flutie retired.
Since day one, I've always felt like I gained strength from the fans being behind me. It's a fun atmosphere in this community, and I was just glad to be a part of it.
He gave you a lot of joy because you realized that he wasn't so different from you, and yet he was doing incredible things. That is the most important thing that he brought to us, especially as a New Englander. It's a great ending to a fairy tale.
An avid Red Sox fan, Doug Flutie supports his team in the flesh whenever he can. Occasionally, he becomes part of the action. At Fenway Park in April of 2005, he caught a ball for the 4th straight time in as many games that he attended, including a home run atop the Green Monster. You have to wonder if luck really has anything to do with it. For Sports Century, I'm Chris Fowler.